The fluorescent lights of the grocery store buzzed overhead as Riley Chen shifted her 4-month-old daughter from one hip to the other. Little Lily had been fussing all morning, and Riley knew exactly why. They were down to the last scoop of formula, and with Lily's sensitive stomach, she couldn't just switch to any brand from the shelf. Riley's feet ached in her worn-out sneakers as she made her way down the baby aisle. She'd been on them since 5 that morning, trying to get everything done before her shift started at the diner. But then Lily had spiked a slight fever. Nothing serious according to the clinic, just some teething discomfort. Still, it meant Riley had to call in sick, which meant no pay for today. And that meant the $23.47 in her pocket was literally everything she had until Friday. She reached for the familiar purple can on the shelf. The hypoallergenic formula, the expensive one. Her hand hesitated for a moment before grabbing it. $22.99. She'd done the math 3 times already this morning. It would leave her with exactly 48 cents. No bus fare, no backup, nothing. But Lily needed to eat. Riley joined the checkout line, unconsciously swaying back and forth the way all mothers do, even when their babies aren't crying. Lily had finally dozed off against her shoulder, her tiny hand clutching Riley's shirt. At least she was peaceful now. Riley tried to be grateful for these small moments, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. The woman in front of her was arguing with the cashier about a coupon, something about it being expired by 2 days. Riley watched the interaction with a mixture of sympathy and impatience. She didn't have the luxury of arguing over coupons. She barely had the luxury of buying groceries at all. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. Riley glanced back quickly and saw a man in a sharp navy suit, the kind that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He was maybe in his late 40s, with silver streaking through his dark hair. He held a basket with just a few items, a bottle of water, a sandwich, and a newspaper. Their eyes met for a brief second before Riley quickly looked away. She was suddenly aware of how she must look. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her jacket with the small stain on the sleeve that never quite came out, the bags under her eyes that had become permanent fixtures since Lily was born. The coupon dispute finally ended, and Riley stepped up to the register. The cashier, a middle-aged woman named Pam, who Riley had seen here dozens of times, gave her a tired smile. "Just this today, honey?" Pam asked, scanning the formula. "Yeah, just this," Riley said, setting the can down and reaching into her pocket for the crumpled bills. $22.99, Pam announced. Riley counted out the money carefully, a 10, 2 5s, 2 1s. Then she dug into her other pocket for the quarters and dimes. She could feel her cheeks burning. The man behind her was probably wondering why she was taking so long, why she was counting out change like every penny mattered, because every penny did matter. She handed the money to Pam, who counted it and then paused. "Sweetie, you're short about 50 cents. Riley's stomach dropped. "What? No, I counted." "I have 23.47, Pam recounted, her expression sympathetic. "I'm showing 22.97 here." Riley stared at the money on the counter. She must have miscounted this morning. Or maybe she'd lost a quarter somewhere. It didn't matter. She didn't have enough. Can you hold on just a second?" Riley asked, her voice shaking slightly. She started patting her pockets frantically, knowing full well they were empty but needing to do something. Lily stirred against her shoulder, making a small whimpering sound. "I'm sorry, honey, but if you don't have it," Pam trailed off, looking genuinely upset about the situation. I know, Riley said quickly. Her mind raced. Could she ask Pam to spot her? No, that was ridiculous. They barely knew each other. Could she put it on credit? She didn't have a credit card. Her debit card was already declined at the gas station yesterday. Maybe try a different brand, Pam suggested gently. We have the store brand for $14.99. She can't have that one, Riley said, and she hated how her voice cracked on the words. She has a sensitive stomach. The regular formula makes her sick. She screams all night and throws up everything, and I can't put her through that again. The line behind her was growing. Riley could feel the weight of impatient stares. Lily was starting to wake up, her little face scrunching up in that way that meant a cry was coming. I'm sorry, Riley said, tears stinging her eyes. I'm really sorry. I'll come back. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She wouldn't have money to come back with. Not until Friday. And Lily needed formula now, not in 3 days. She reached for the can to put it back, her hand trembling. This was it. This was the moment she'd been dreading since Lily was born. The moment when being 19 and alone and broke finally caught up with her in the most humiliating way possible. She'd managed to keep things together for 4 months, working double shifts, skipping meals, doing everything she could, and it still wasn't enough. "I'll cover it." The voice came from behind her, deep and calm. Riley turned and saw the man in the navy suit stepping forward. He was already reaching for his wallet. "What?" Riley blinked at him, not understanding. "The formula," he said, pulling out a credit card. The light caught it and Riley saw the metallic gleam. "I'll pay for it." "No," Riley said automatically, shaking her head. "No, you don't have to do that." "I can't." "Please," the man said, and there was something in his eyes that stopped her protest. Not pity exactly. Something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. "Let me help." He handed his card to Pam before Riley could say another word. Pam swiped it quickly, clearly relieved to move things along. The receipt printed. The transaction was done. Riley stood there, frozen, holding Lily and the can of formula she could suddenly afford. Her throat felt tight. The tears that had been threatening to fall now spilled over, running hot down her cheeks. I don't know what to say," she managed. The man waved his hand dismissively, but his expression was kind. "You don't have to say anything." "At least tell me your name," Riley said, "so I can pay you back. I get paid on Friday, and I promise I'll—" "That's not necessary," he interrupted gently. "Really, just take care of your daughter." He glanced down at Lily, who had fully woken up now and was staring at him with wide, curious eyes. A small smile crossed his face, and for just a moment he looked far away, like he was remembering something. "I have a daughter too," he said quietly. "Well, she's not a baby anymore. She's 16 now. But I remember those days. The worry, the late nights. The feeling that you're doing everything you can and wondering if it's enough." He looked back at Riley. "You're doing a good job. Don't let anyone tell you different." Riley couldn't speak. She nodded, clutching Lily a little tighter. The man picked up his basket and moved to the next register. Just like that, he was gone, leaving Riley standing there with her formula and a kindness she hadn't expected and didn't know how to process. Pam handed her the receipt and the bag. "You've got a good one there," she said, nodding toward the man who was already checking out at the other register. "Not many people would do that." Riley looked over at him. He was talking to the other cashier now, laughing at something, looking completely normal. Like he hadn't just saved her from one of the worst moments of her life. Like $23 was nothing to him, when to her it was everything. She wanted to run after him, to thank him properly, to get his number so she really could pay him back. But her feet wouldn't move, and maybe that was okay. Maybe some kindnesses weren't meant to be repaid. Maybe they were meant to be passed forward. Riley walked out of the store into the bright afternoon sunlight, holding Lily and the purple can of formula. Her feet still ached. She still had 47 cents to her name. She still had to figure out how to get through the next 3 days. But somehow the weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter, because for just a few minutes in the middle of a grocery store checkout line, someone had seen her, really seen her. Not as a statistic or a burden or a mistake, just as a mother trying her best. And right now, in this moment, that was enough. The man's name was David Patterson, though Riley wouldn't learn that until much later. Right now, as he walked to his car with his sandwich and water, he was thinking about the young mother he'd just helped. Something about her desperation had struck a chord deep in his chest. He sat in his luxury sedan for a moment before starting the engine, staring at nothing in particular. The girl couldn't have been much older than his own daughter. 19, 20 at most, and already carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. David had built his fortune from the ground up. He'd started as a stock boy at a grocery store chain 40 years ago, worked his way through business school at night, and climbed the corporate ladder until he became CEO of Megamart Corporation, which owned hundreds of stores across the country, including this one. He'd come to this particular store today for a surprise inspection. He did them quarterly, showing up unannounced to see how things really ran when corporate wasn't expected. So far, everything had checked out. Clean aisles, friendly staff, good inventory. But that encounter at the checkout had left him unsettled in a way he couldn't quite explain. $23. That's all she had, and she was willing to spend nearly all of it on formula for her baby. No thought for herself. No hesitation. David pulled out his phone and called his assistant, Monica. "Mr. Patterson?" She answered on the first ring. "Monica, I need you to do something for me," he said. "Pull up the employee records for all Megamart locations in the city. I'm looking for a young woman, early 20s, has a baby. First name might be Riley." There was a pause. "Sir, we have over 2,000 employees in this metro area. Can you be more specific?" David closed his eyes, trying to remember details. "She's Asian, looks exhausted. Works hard, I'd guess, based on her hands. Probably part-time." "That still leaves quite a few people, sir." "I know," David said. "But humor me. Cross-reference with anyone who's had attendance issues recently. Medical leave, sick days, anything related to childcare. May I ask what this is about?" David hesitated. How could he explain it? "Just a hunch," he said finally. "Let me know what you find." He drove back to the corporate office, but his mind stayed at that grocery store. In the evening, Monica called him back. "I think I found her," Monica said. "Riley Chen, 19 years old. She works at our Parkside location as a night stalker. Been with us for 7 months. Perfect attendance until about 4 months ago. Then sporadic absences, all marked as personal leave." 4 months, David murmured. "That's when the baby was born." "Sir?" "Nothing." "What else?" "According to her supervisor's notes, she's an excellent worker. Fast, efficient, always willing to help. But her hours were cut 6 weeks ago. Budgetary constraints." David felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. Budgetary constraints? What's that store's profit margin? He could hear Monica typing. "Parkside location is showing a 22% increase in quarterly profits." "Of course it is," David said bitterly. "And we cut her hours anyway. Sir, it's standard policy. Part-time workers are capped at 30 hours to avoid benefit requirements." "I know the policy, Monica. I signed off on it." David rubbed his temples. "What's her current schedule?" "Night shift Tuesday through Saturday. 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., 5 hours a night." 5 hours, David repeated. 25 hours a week. "That's what, about $300 after taxes?" "Roughly, yes. And she's supporting a baby on that." "Sir, is everything all right?" David didn't answer right away. He was thinking about his own daughter, Melissa. She was 16, driving a car he'd bought her, wearing clothes that cost more than Riley probably made in a month. She wanted to go to Yale. She'd get in, of course. Money wasn't an issue. It had never been an issue, but once upon a time it had been. David remembered being 20 years old, working 2 jobs, eating ramen for dinner. He remembered his wife crying because they couldn't afford the security deposit on a better apartment. He remembered what it felt like to count pennies. Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten. The corner office and the executive bonuses had insulated him from the reality of what most of his employees faced every day. "Monica, clear my schedule for tomorrow night," David said. "Sir, you have the board dinner? Cancel it. Tell them something came up." "What should I tell them came up?" "The truth," David said. "Tell them I'm going to visit one of our stores." The next night, David dressed in jeans and a plain jacket. No suit, no tie. Nothing that would identify him as corporate. He arrived at the Parkside Megamart at 11:15 p.m., just after Riley's shift would have started. The store was quieter at night. A few customers wandered the aisles, mostly people getting off late shifts themselves or insomniacs picking up random necessities. David grabbed a basket and pretended to shop while he looked for Riley. He found her in the cereal aisle, restocking shelves from a large cart. She moved quickly, her hands a blur as she rotated old stock forward and placed new boxes behind them. Even from a distance, he could see the exhaustion in every movement. But she didn't slow down. She didn't cut corners. A customer approached her, an elderly man who looked confused. "Excuse me, miss. I'm looking for the prune juice." Riley immediately stopped what she was doing, her face brightening with a genuine smile. "Oh, that's on aisle 7. But let me walk you there. Some of the bottles are on the top shelf." "You don't have to do that," the man said, but Riley was already leading him away. David followed at a distance, watching as Riley not only showed the man to the right aisle, but actually reached up and got the bottle down for him. They chatted for a minute about something David couldn't hear, but it made the old man laugh. Riley laughed too, and for just a moment she looked like what she was, a teenager. A kid who should be at parties or studying for exams, not working night shifts to feed a baby. Riley returned to her cart and continued stocking. David positioned himself in the next aisle, pretending to compare pasta sauce labels while he watched her through the gaps in the shelves. She worked through her break, he noticed. When the wall clock showed 1 a.m., when she should have been in the break room for 15 minutes, she was still on the floor, finishing up the cereal aisle before moving on to canned goods. Finally, around 1:30, she pushed her empty cart toward the back of the store. David followed, keeping his distance. She went to the break room, a small, dingy space with a few tables and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. Riley pulled out her phone and made a video call. David couldn't hear the conversation from where he stood in the hallway, but he saw her face light up when someone answered. She was talking to her baby, he realized, or whoever was watching her baby. Her whole demeanor changed. The exhaustion melted away, replaced by pure love and joy. "Is she sleeping?" he heard Riley ask. "Did she take the whole bottle?" "Good. That's good. I miss her so much. Just a few more hours and I'll be home." After the call ended, Riley pulled out a container from her bag. Instant noodles. She poured hot water from the coffee maker into the cup and stirred, waiting for them to cook. That was her dinner. At 1:30 in the morning, sodium-packed instant noodles that probably cost 50 cents. David's chest tightened. This girl was working herself to death for pennies while the company she worked for reported record profits. His company. He turned and walked back to his car, his mind racing. He'd seen enough. The next morning, David called an emergency meeting with his executive team. Around the conference table sat the people who helped him run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Chief Financial Officer, Head of Operations, Director of Human Resources. "We need to talk about our employment practices," David said without preamble. His CFO, a sharp-faced man named Gerald, raised an eyebrow. "What about them?" "We're cutting hours to avoid paying benefits. We're keeping people at just under 30 hours a week, giving them just enough to keep them dependent on us but not enough to actually live on. With respect, sir, that's standard practice across the entire retail industry," Gerald said. "It's how we maintain our profit margins." "I don't care what standard," David said. "It's wrong." The room fell silent. His head of operations, Patricia, cleared her throat. "David, I understand the sentiment, but we have shareholders to answer to. If we start increasing labor costs without a corresponding increase in revenue—" "Our revenue is fine," David interrupted. "We posted a 14% increase last quarter. We can afford to treat our people better." "It's not about what we can afford," Gerald said carefully. "It's about maximizing return on investment. That's our fiduciary duty." "Our duty," David said, his voice hard, "is to run a sustainable business. And you can't sustain a business on the backs of people who can't afford to eat." He told them about Riley, about the formula and the instant noodles and the video call with her baby during her break. He told them about the perfect attendance record that fell apart when she became a mother, about the cut hours and the exhaustion. "She's 19 years old," David said. "She's working herself into the ground for us and we're paying her poverty wages." "She's part-time," Gerald said. "If she needs more money, she can find a second job. She's working 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. 5 nights a week. When exactly should she get this second job? And who's going to watch her baby? That's not really our problem." "It is our problem." David slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "It's absolutely our problem. We employ her. We set her wages. We cut her hours. We created this situation." Patricia spoke up, her voice gentler than Gerald's. "What are you proposing, David?" David took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. "I'm proposing we change things. Raise the minimum wage for all our employees. 30% increase." 30%? Gerald looked like he might have a heart attack. "That will cost us millions." "We have millions," David said flatly. "Next, everyone gets minimum 35 hours a week. That pushes them over the threshold for benefits, which is exactly what we're going to give them. Health insurance, dental, vision, the works." "David, this is financial suicide," Gerald said. "No, it's not. Run the numbers. What's our turnover rate?" The HR director spoke up for the first time. 73% annually. "And how much does it cost us to recruit and train new employees?" "About $1,200 per employee on average." "So we're hemorrhaging money on turnover," David said. "What if we could cut that in half by actually treating people well? By giving them a reason to stay?" Patricia looked thoughtful. "It might actually work." Happy employees are more productive. They call in sick less. They provide better customer service. This is insane, Gerald muttered. You're making decisions based on one sob story instead of data. You're wrong, David said. I'm making decisions based on years of data that we've been ignoring because it didn't fit our narrative. We've been squeezing our employees dry and wondering why morale is low and turnover is high. Maybe it's time to try something different. He looked around the table at his team. Here's what's going to happen. We're implementing these changes, starting with a pilot program at 10 locations. We'll run it for 6 months and measure the results. Productivity, turnover, sales, customer satisfaction, everything. If it works, we roll it out company-wide. If it doesn't, we revisit, but we're trying it. And if the board disagrees, Gerald asked, then they can fire me, David said. But I'm betting they won't, because I'm betting this is going to be the best decision this company ever made. The meeting adjourned, and David sat alone in the conference room looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Riley was probably sleeping after her night shift, catching a few hours of rest before her baby woke up again. She had no idea that her life was about to change, that a chance encounter in a grocery store had started something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. Riley's phone buzzed while she was changing Lily's diaper. She glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number. Probably spam. She ignored it and finished getting Lily dressed in a tiny yellow onesie that was getting too small. Everything was getting too small. Babies grew so fast, and Riley couldn't afford to keep up. The phone buzzed again. Same number. Then a third time. With a sigh, Riley picked up. Hello? Is this Riley Chen? A professional-sounding woman's voice, yes? Who's this? My name is Monica, and I'm calling from Megamart corporate headquarters. Is this a good time to talk? Riley's stomach dropped. Corporate was calling her? That couldn't be good. Had someone complained about her? Had she made some mistake during her shift? Yeah, I can talk, Riley said, sitting down on the edge of her bed. Lily cooed happily on the floor, playing with her toes. Wonderful. Mr. Patterson, our CEO, would like to meet with you. Would you be available tomorrow at 2 p.m.? The CEO wants to meet with me? Riley's voice came out higher than normal. Why, did I do something wrong? Not at all, Monica said, and Riley thought she heard a smile in her voice. Quite the opposite. He was very impressed with your work ethic and would like to discuss your future with the company. My future? Riley repeated dumbly. Yes, we'll send a car to pick you up. Where should the driver meet you? Riley looked around her tiny apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the second-hand furniture, the stack of bills on the counter that she couldn't pay. She gave Monica her address, still not quite believing this was real. After she hung up, Riley stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she called the only person she trusted, her neighbor Mrs. Kim, who sometimes watched Lily when Riley was desperate. The CEO of Megamart wants to meet with me, Riley said when Mrs. Kim answered. Is that weird? That's weird, right? Maybe they want to promote you, Mrs. Kim suggested. To what? Night shift supervisor? That's still minimum wage. Maybe they saw something special in you. Mrs. Kim, I stock shelves. There's nothing special about that. But even as she said it, Riley felt a tiny flutter of hope in her chest. What if this was something good? What if things were finally going to get better? The next day, Riley spent an hour trying to figure out what to wear. She owned exactly one nice outfit, a black pencil skirt and a white blouse that she'd bought from a thrift store for her original job interview. She put it on and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked professional enough. Tired, but professional. The car that arrived was ridiculous. A sleek black sedan with leather seats and a driver in a suit. Riley had never been in a car this nice in her entire life. She buckled Lily into the car seat she'd brought and slid in beside her, feeling completely out of place. Where are we going? Riley asked the driver. Megamart corporate headquarters, ma'am, he said politely, as if chauffeuring teenage mothers around was something he did every day. The headquarters building was downtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that Riley had passed 100 times, but never imagined entering. The driver pulled up to the front entrance where Monica was waiting. Riley? Monica was a well-dressed woman in her 40s with kind eyes. I'm so glad you could make it. And this must be Lily. Yeah, Riley said, suddenly self-conscious about bringing her baby to a corporate meeting. I'm sorry I didn't have anyone to watch her. Don't apologize, Mr. Patterson specifically said to bring her. Monica led them inside to an elevator that required a key card to access. They rode up in silence, Lily wide-eyed at her reflection in the mirrored walls. They got off on the top floor where everything was even more intimidating. Modern art on the walls, expensive furniture, people in suits walking purposefully from office to office. Monica led Riley to a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. And sitting behind a massive desk was the man from the grocery store, the one who'd bought her formula. Riley froze in the doorway. "You?" David Patterson stood up, smiling. "Hello, Riley, thank you for coming." "I don't understand," Riley said. You're the CEO?" "I am. Please sit down." Riley sat, still holding Lily, her mind racing. The man who'd helped her in her most desperate moment ran the entire company she worked for. How was that possible? "I owe you an apology," David said, sitting back down. "I wasn't entirely honest with you at the store. I knew you worked for Megamart before I paid for that formula." "You knew? How?" "I just finished a surprise inspection of that location. I recognized the exhaustion of someone working too hard for too little. And when I saw you counting out change for baby formula," he paused. "Let's just say it reminded me of some things I'd been trying to forget." Riley didn't know what to say. She clutched Lily a little tighter. "After we met, I looked into your employment record," David continued. "Perfect attendance for 7 months, then things got complicated when Lily was born. Your hours were cut. You're making about $1,200 a month, if I'm calculating correctly." Riley felt her cheeks burn. Having someone lay out the facts of her poverty so plainly was humiliating. "I also visited your store the other night," David said. "You didn't know I was there. I watched you work. I saw you help that elderly customer find his prune juice even though that's not your job. I saw you work through your break. I saw you eat instant noodles at 1:30 in the morning because that's all you could afford. You followed me?" Riley wasn't sure if she should be angry or frightened. "I needed to understand," David said simply. "I needed to see what life was really like for my employees. Because the truth is, Riley, I'd lost touch. I've been so focused on profit margins and shareholder returns that I forgot about the people who actually make this company run." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. 40 years ago, I was you. I was a stock boy making minimum wage, trying to support a pregnant wife while going to school at night. I remember what it felt like to choose between groceries and rent. To wear the same pair of shoes until they literally fell apart. To be one emergency away from complete disaster. He turned back to face her. Somewhere along the way, up that corporate ladder, I forgot that feeling. I forgot that policies I signed off on, decisions I made in boardrooms, had real consequences for real people. You reminded me. "I don't understand what you want from me," Riley said quietly. "I want to offer you a job," David said. "A real job. Not stocking shelves at night, but working here in this building, helping me fix the things that are broken in this company." Riley stared at him. "Doing what?" "I don't have any experience. I didn't even finish high school." "You have something more valuable than experience or education," David said. "You have perspective. You know what it's like to be on the other side of our policies. You know what our employees need because you are one of our employees." He explained his vision. A new department focused on employee advocacy. Someone who could identify the gaps between corporate policy and actual reality. Someone who could make sure that the decisions made in boardrooms didn't destroy lives on the ground floor. "The salary would be $60,000 a year," David said, "plus full benefits. Health insurance, dental, vision, childcare assistance. We have an on-site daycare facility for employee children." Riley couldn't breathe. $60,000? She currently made $14,000. This was more money than she'd ever imagined having. It was enough to afford a better apartment, to buy Lily clothes that fit, to not live in constant fear of the next emergency. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why not someone qualified?" "Because someone qualified would come in with preconceptions. They'd talk about best practices and industry standards. You'll talk about what actually works, what actually helps." David leaned forward. "I'm not looking for someone to make me feel good about our policies. I'm looking for someone to challenge them. To tell me when we're getting it wrong." "Can you do that?" Riley looked down at Lily, who was chewing on her own hand and drooling happily. This baby was the reason she'd pushed through every horrible shift, every humiliating moment, every day when she wanted to give up. And now someone was offering her a chance to build a real life for them both. "What if I'm not smart enough?" Riley asked. "What if I mess up?" "Then you'll learn," David said. I'm not expecting perfection, Riley. I'm expecting honesty. I'm expecting you to bring your experience and your insight and help me build something better than what we have now." Riley took a shaky breath. "Okay," she said. "Yes, I'll do it." David smiled, and it was genuine and warm. "Excellent. Monica will get you set up with everything you need. Computer, phone, office space. You'll start Monday, which gives you a few days to arrange things." As Riley stood to leave, David stopped her. "One more thing. I want you to know that this isn't charity. I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because I think you're going to help me change this company for the better. You earned this." Riley nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She was afraid if she opened her mouth, she'd start crying and never stop. That weekend, Riley gave her 2 weeks' notice at the store. Her supervisor looked confused. "You're quitting to go where?" "Corporate," Riley said, still barely believing it herself. "Employee advocacy department." "There's an employee advocacy department?" "There is now." Riley spent her last 2 weeks on night shift in a daze. She worked the same aisles, stocked the same shelves, but everything felt different. She wasn't stuck anymore. She had a future. On her last night, Pam, the cashier, the one who'd been at the register during the formula incident, pulled her aside. "I heard you're moving to corporate," Pam said. "Good for you, honey. You deserve it." "Thanks, Pam. When you're up there in that fancy office, remember us down here, okay? Remember what it's like." "I will," Riley promised. "I won't forget," and she meant it. Because how could she forget? The fear, the exhaustion, the constant worry, those things didn't just disappear because you got a better job. They stayed with you. They shaped you. Riley's first day at corporate was terrifying. Monica showed her to her office with her name on the door, and Riley just stood in the doorway staring. She had a desk, a computer, a window with a view. "David wants to see you when you're settled," Monica said. Riley found David in his office looking over some reports. He glanced up when she knocked. "Riley, how's the first day going?" "It's overwhelming," she admitted. "Good. That means you're paying attention." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I have your first assignment. I want you to visit every Megamart location in the city, not as corporate, as yourself. Talk to the employees. Find out what their biggest challenges are. What would make their jobs easier? What policies are helping and which ones are making things harder? Just talk to them." "Just talk to them," David confirmed. "Then come back and tell me what you learned. No filter, no sugarcoating. I want the truth." Riley spent the next 2 months doing exactly that. She visited stores during day shifts and night shifts. She talked to cashiers and stockers and managers. She heard stories that broke her heart and stories that made her angry. She learned that employees were afraid to call in sick because they'd get written up, that mothers were hiding pregnancies because they knew they'd lose hours, that people were working second and third jobs just to survive, showing up exhausted and running on fumes. She compiled everything into a report and presented it to David. She'd expected him to be defensive or dismissive. Instead, he looked devastated. "This is what we've been doing to people?" he asked quietly, reading through her findings. "This is what every retail company does," Riley said. "You're not unique, but you could be." David looked up at her. "How?" "By actually caring," Riley said simply. "By treating your employees like people instead of numbers on a spreadsheet. By asking what they need instead of telling them what they should be grateful for." David set down the report. "Tell me what needs to change," so Riley did, and David listened. 6 months into her new role, Riley stood in front of the entire executive board of Megamart Corporation. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. But her voice was steady as she began her presentation. "When I started working for Megamart, I was making $8.50 an hour," Riley said. "Working 5-hour shifts 5 nights a week. After taxes, that came to about $1,200 a month. My rent was $700. Utilities were about $100. Daycare for my daughter was $400. And that was for the cheapest place I could find that didn't look like it would traumatize her for life." She clicked to the next slide, which showed a simple budget breakdown. That left me with $0 for food, transportation, clothes, formula, diapers, or any unexpected expense, which meant I was going into debt just to survive. And I was one of your best employees. Perfect attendance. Always on time. Never complained. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. Gerald, the CFO who'd fought David's changes from the beginning, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. 6 months ago, Mr. Patterson implemented a pilot program at 10 stores, Riley continued. Minimum wage increased by 30%. Guaranteed minimum hours of 35 per week. Full benefits including healthcare and childcare assistance. Many of you predicted this would be a disaster. You said it would destroy our profit margins. You said employees would take advantage. You said it was financial suicide. She clicked to the next slide, which showed a graph with several upward trending lines. You were wrong. The room fell silent. Riley could feel David's encouraging presence to her left, but she kept her eyes on the board members. At the 10 pilot stores, employee turnover dropped by 47%, Riley said. That's 47% fewer people to recruit, hire, and train. At $1,200 per employee, we're saving approximately $2.3 million annually, just on reduced turnover. She clicked again. Productivity increased by 18%. When people aren't exhausted from working 3 jobs, when they're not constantly stressed about how to feed their children, they work better. They're faster. They make fewer mistakes. Customer satisfaction scores at pilot locations increased by 22%. Another click. Sales increased by 15% at pilot locations compared to control stores, because good employees provide good customer service, and good customer service drives sales. This isn't complicated mathematics. Happy employees equal happy customers equal more money. Gerald cleared his throat. What about the increased labor costs? Labor costs did increase, Riley acknowledged, by approximately $4.2 million across the 10 pilot stores. But we're saving $2.3 million on turnover. We're seeing increased revenue of roughly $8.7 million from higher sales. Net gain, $6.8 million in 6 months. She let that number hang in the air for a moment. But let's talk about what you can't measure in spreadsheets, Riley said, her voice growing more passionate. 3 employees at our Parkside location were able to quit their second jobs. One woman, Teresa, who was working at Megamart and then cleaning offices until 3 a.m., is now sleeping more than 4 hours a night for the first time in 2 years. She told me she feels like a human being again. Riley clicked to a slide showing employee testimonials. Miguel in electronics was able to move his family out of a motel and into an actual apartment. His daughter has her own bedroom for the first time in her life. She's doing better in school. She's not sick all the time anymore. Another click. Jennifer, who was rationing insulin because she couldn't afford both her medication and rent, now has health insurance. She's not going to die because we decided profit margins were more important than her life. Riley looked directly at Gerald. You asked about cost. Here's a cost for you. What's the cost of knowing your employees are suffering? What's the cost of building your success on the backs of people who can't afford to feed their families? What's the cost to your conscience? Riley, David said softly, a note of warning in his voice. She was pushing too hard, but Riley couldn't stop. I was that employee. 6 months ago, I was standing in a checkout line, literally counting pennies trying to buy formula for my baby. I was working as hard as I possibly could, and it wasn't enough. Not because I was lazy or uneducated or making bad choices, but because the system was designed to keep me down. She took a breath, forcing herself to calm down. Mr. Patterson gave me an opportunity to escape that system. But I'm standing here today to tell you that one person's success story isn't good enough. We need to change the system itself. We need to make it so that anyone who works full-time can afford to live. That's not radical. That's basic human decency. The board members looked at each other. Some seemed moved. Others looked skeptical. Patricia, the head of operations, spoke up. The data is compelling, she said, and the human element is important. But what happens when we scale this company-wide? We're talking about hundreds of stores, thousands of employees. Can we sustain these numbers? I believe we can, David said, speaking for the first time. But more than that, I believe we have to. Riley is right. We can't keep building our empire on the suffering of our workers. It's not sustainable in the long term, and it's not who I want us to be as a company. He stood up, walking to the window. I started this company 40 years ago with 1 store and a dream. I wanted to provide good products at fair prices. Somewhere along the way, that dream got corrupted. We started focusing solely on profit, on growth, on beating the competition. We forgot about the people who made all of that possible. He turned back to face the board. Riley reminded me of what matters. Not the quarterly earnings report. Not the stock price. The people. Our employees who show up every day and work hard and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. With all due respect, David, Gerald said, dignity and respect don't pay the bills. Neither does employee turnover, David shot back. Neither does poor customer service. Neither does a reputation as a company that exploits its workers. You want to talk about long-term sustainability? Treating people well is the only sustainable business model there is. The debate went on for another hour. Riley answered questions, provided more data, told more stories. Finally, the board called for a vote. All in favor of expanding the pilot program company-wide? Riley held her breath. One by one, hands went up. Even Gerald, after a long moment of hesitation, raised his hand. Motion passes unanimously, the board chairman said. The program will be rolled out to all locations over the next fiscal quarter. Riley felt tears prick her eyes. She'd done it. They'd actually done it. After the meeting, David found her in her office. Lily was there too, playing in the corner of the room with blocks from the company daycare. She was 6 months old now, happy and healthy and thriving. You did well today, David said. I almost lost my temper with Gerald. You almost lost your temper with him? David laughed. I wanted to throw him out the window, but you kept your cool and let the data speak for itself. That's why this worked. Riley looked down at her hands. Do you think it will really make a difference? Company-wide? I know it will, David said. Already word is spreading in the industry. Other companies are watching us. If this works, and it will, others will follow. You're starting something bigger than just one company, Riley. I'm not starting anything, Riley said. You're the one who made this happen. No, David said firmly. You did. I wrote some checks and changed some policies. But you're the one who showed me why it mattered. You're the one who put a human face on the numbers. You're the one who refused to let me forget what it feels like to struggle. He sat down across from her. Can I tell you something? My daughter, Melissa. She asked me the other day why I was spending so much time on this project. She said she thought I cared more about it than anything else, even her. Riley felt a stab of guilt. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That I'm doing this because of you and Lily. Because I look at you two and I see what could have happened to her mother and me 40 years ago if we hadn't gotten lucky. I see how close you came to falling through the cracks. And I realized that luck shouldn't be the determining factor in whether someone can afford to feed their baby. He smiled. Then I brought Melissa here to meet you. I showed her your office, introduced her to Lily. I wanted her to understand that real leadership isn't about making yourself rich. It's about lifting others up with you. What did she say? She said you were cool and asked if she could babysit Lily sometime. David laughed. Then she asked me to help her start a volunteer program at her school, working with teenage mothers who are trying to stay in education. You inspired her. Riley didn't know what to say to that. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, a struggling teenage mother that people looked past or looked down on. Now she was inspiring the children of billionaires. There's something else I wanted to talk to you about, David said. We're launching a scholarship program. Full tuition, books, living expenses for employees who want to go back to school. I want you to be the first recipient. David, I can't. Yes, you can. You can go to school part-time, keep working here, and build whatever future you want for yourself and Lily. You could study business, social work, whatever interests you. What do you say? Riley looked over at Lily, who had abandoned her blocks and was trying to pull herself up using the couch. Soon she'd be walking, then talking, then going to school herself. And Riley wanted to be able to show her that education mattered, that learning mattered, that you could change your circumstances through hard work and determination. Okay, Riley said. Yes, thank you. Over the next few months, the changes rolled out across all Megamart locations. There were growing pains, certainly. Some employees who'd been getting by with mediocre performance suddenly found themselves held to higher standards. A few managers who'd been cutting corners to boost their numbers got reassigned or let go. But mostly the transformation was remarkable. Employee satisfaction scores went up. Turnover continued to drop. Sales continued to rise. The media started paying attention, writing stories about Megamart's revolutionary approach to retail employment. Riley became the public face of the initiative. She did interviews, spoke at conferences, met with other companies who wanted to learn from Megamart's example. She told her story over and over, and each time, she saw recognition in people's eyes. How many of them had been where she was? How many were still there? One day, a young woman approached her after a conference speech. She couldn't have been more than 18 and she was crying. I just wanted to thank you, the girl said. I work at a grocery store and I have a baby, and I thought I was going to have to drop out of school because I couldn't afford childcare. But my company announced yesterday that they're copying Megamart's program. Because of you, I get to keep going to school. Because of you, my son gets to eat. Riley hugged her. This stranger whose life she'd somehow changed without even knowing her name. And she understood finally what David had been trying to tell her all along. This wasn't about one person's success story. It was about changing the entire game. That night, Riley sat in her apartment, a much nicer apartment now in a safe neighborhood with good schools, and watched Lily sleep. The baby monitor glowed softly on the nightstand. Riley's laptop was open, showing her online coursework for her business degree. Bills sat on the table, all paid on time. She thought about the person she'd been 6 months ago. Desperate, exhausted, hopeless. She thought about counting pennies in a checkout line, about working through breaks, about eating instant noodles at 1 a.m. That girl would never have believed that any of this was possible. But it was possible. It was real. And if it could happen for her, it could happen for anyone. Riley opened her laptop and started typing. She was working on a proposal for David, a plan to expand their model beyond retail into other industries, restaurants, warehouses, anywhere that people were working hard and still struggling to survive. The work was just beginning, but for the first time in her life, Riley believed that change was actually possible, that the system could be better, that people like her deserved better, and she was going to make sure they got it. 1 year after Riley had stood in that checkout line counting pennies, she walked through the same store with a television news crew following her. The segment was called Where Are They Now? And Riley had agreed to do it because she wanted people to see that change was real and lasting. This is where it happened, Riley told the reporter, stopping at Register 3 where Pam still worked. This is where I tried to buy formula with my last $23, Pam waved at the camera, grinning. I remember that day. I felt so bad for her. But look at her now, the reporter turned to Riley. You're the director of employee relations for Megamart Corporation now. That's quite a jump from Night Stalker. It is, Riley agreed, but I'm still the same person I was that day. I just have more resources now to help other people who are where I was. They interviewed other employees throughout the store. Everyone had stories. Teresa, who used to work 2 jobs, talked about finally being able to attend her son's soccer games. Miguel showed off pictures of his daughter's bedroom, tears in his eyes. Jennifer pulled up her sleeve to show her continuous glucose monitor, the one her new insurance covered. These are the real stories, Riley told the camera. These are the people who matter. The segment aired that evening. By morning, it had been viewed over 10 million times online. Riley's phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets, podcasters, other companies wanting to know how they could implement similar programs. But the call that mattered most came from someone unexpected. Is this Riley Chen? A woman's voice, hesitant and young. Yes, who's this? My name is Nicole. I saw your interview. I'm 19 and I have a 6-month-old son and I'm working at a fast food place making minimum wage and I needed to hear that it gets better. That people like us can make it. Riley closed her eyes, remembering that feeling. The hopelessness, the fear. It does get better, she said. Tell me about your situation. They talked for an hour. Riley learned that Nicole was living with her mother, trying to save money for her own place. She'd dropped out of high school when she got pregnant but wanted to get her GED. She was smart and motivated but drowning in the same system that had almost destroyed Riley.